studio, Arconix Animation Studios, and you are watching the November 2010 video lecture. It is obviously on Lipsync. So welcome. I've been doing lectures for a long time. If this is the first one you've seen, again, welcome. And what you're in store for, or what is in store for you, rather, is a lecture that is very conference style. I've reformatted a lot of the lectures that I've given to be able to be presented in a less than 90-minute format. Most of these are between an hour and 90 minutes. And the reason is because that is perfect amount of time, in my opinion, to really get a single, very in-depth concept really covered well. So a lot of the information you're going to see here and in all of the video lectures are going to be things that are presented in a way that is very straightforward and can be applied immediately into your workflow. You're going to hear me say the word workflow a lot. If you are subscribed to the site, then you're going to find out very quickly that workflow is my favorite word. The biggest problem I always find in animators that are learning how or want to improve is that they don't know how to approach their animation. They have all of the animation fundamentals down pat, all the concepts are all there. However, whenever it comes time to apply these ideas, things start to fall apart. So, this lecture is about improving your lip sync, and we're going to do that with workflow. I'm going to teach you a workflow that I developed naturally. Basically, it was trial by fire. My first job was at a studio called Super 78, my first real paying animation, character animation gig. And we were working on a project that was very, very, very tight schedule, and it was something like 20 minutes that we had to complete in 12 weeks. When I was working on this project, it was me and about 5 other animators, okay? And what ended up happening was I got a extremely long shot that couldn't be split up among other animators, and I ended up having to do something around 30 seconds of lip sync per day. Now that might seem impossible, and it pretty nearly is, but because of that pressure and because I had to perform on that timeline, I ended up developing a workflow that is very efficient and very well thought out. So this workflow will get you about 80% of the way there with your animation, with your lip sync animation. And then the rest is fine-tuning, polishing, and really making it textural and organic and realistic and phenomenal. But I'm going to teach you what I developed out of necessity. And they say necessity is the mother of invention, and I truly believe that because of what ended up happening at this studio. And what happened was, normally my animation, my lip sync, was bought off, was approved first time it was seen by my supervisor. So that was normal. That was about, again, 85% of the time. So this will really get you very far. Now, this is very similar to Jason Osipa's method, which is in the book Stop Staring. It's a fantastic book. You should get it. And a few key differences that I will explain later. So let's just get started, shall we? Here's the outline of what we're going to talk about. We're going to start with the basics. I'm just going to talk a little bit about things like anatomy and talking about planning tools, those kinds of things. And we'll very quickly move on to dissecting dialogue. We'll listen to a piece of dialogue together and dissect it. We'll start talking about the parts of speech and the parts of visible lip sync, phonemes, diphthong, etc. We'll talk a little bit about physics. And then we're going to go into the actual workflow, which is start smart, perfect your jaw pass. Then the lips and jaw relationship, remembering the fundamentals, and then we're going to create a shot. Luckily, I've given this lip sync lecture a few times. So I've created a few shots already, and we're going to kind of do this, Julia Child's method of, putting the duck in the oven and 5 seconds later, oh, it's all done. so that you don't have to sit through the actual work. However, I will note, and I'll probably mention this again, but all of the times that I've done this in a conference, I've actually been able to do the 10 seconds of lip sync animation in about a 30-minute demo. And it was very close. It was very good, in my opinion. So the workflow will speak for itself. Let's start with dissecting dialogue, actually. Listen over and over and over and over. And you've heard this, and I know you've heard this. You're looking for just like cues of the context of the scene, the subtext of the scene, all of those things. You really want to know your character and understand your character. But one thing that I have found really adds to the quality of the lip sync animation is anchors. Okay, little breaths, pauses, stutters, hitches, fumbles, bumbling, that makes it so that you can anchor the visuals to what the audience is hearing. So when a person is talking, all these like little tiny little sounds that we don't mean to make, breaths, stutters, all these things actually really contribute to the believability of the lip sync when your audience is watching. It's a great way to make it so that the audience isn't as attracted to the things like the custom F and V shapes, those snarly R's and those really pursed lip, puckered CHs, those kinds of things. They don't have to be as right on if it feels like the character is actually in the space, breathing air and pushing it out. Okay? And these things, anchors, really do that. Okay? And so we're going to listen to a couple pieces of dialogue that have anchors in them, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And then afterwards, listen some more. You cannot listen to your dialogue enough. You can tell if you're listening to your dialogue enough if, like at lunch break or when you're home with your family, though this will probably drive them nuts, you can recite all of your lines without missing a beat, without missing a word, 2 years later. Of course, you're going to have to wait 2 years to tell if you're listening to your dialogue enough right now, but the point is that it needs to really just become a part of you. If you're listening to your dialogue enough, you'll also be able to do the performance of that dialogue for video reference or for your supervisor or just for practice really accurately, which definitely helps. If you're fumbling over the words and you just can't remember the intonation or the way it's delivered, then when you're trying to feel out the character and really move like the character preparing for your animation, it's just going to be cumbersome. So you really ought to make that a priority to listen to your dialogue a lot. Okay? So these are some of the tools. I just wanted to bring these up for a simple reason, that these tools have their pros and cons. These are not just, okay, well, look at all these things, and everyone do these right now. Everyone take these tools, and you should never do another piece of lip sync without using all of these. Certainly not. I just want to talk about this. X sheets, otherwise known as exposure sheets or dope sheets, are pieces of paper that were used in traditional animation. They're still used to give an indication of the timing to the cameraman who is exposing, that's where it comes from, exposing the cell on film. But also, it had the dialogue, and you could break down the dialogue on the left side and actually give yourself a timing tool when you're animating the lip sync. Well, the thing is that the way that we are creating lip sync is different to the way that they were creating lip sync. We mostly do not want to be animating straightforward and on ones in the mouth. We're going to be relying in some way, shape, or form on the way that your 3D software is interpolating those keyframes. So what I'm getting at is when we're creating it, we need to know that there's going to be motion in between these keys that we're setting, whereas an X sheet kind of builds in all of the visual concepts of animating lip sync into one thing. Or simply put, if you try to use an X sheet with Maya, you're probably going to get into a lot of trouble. And I'll tell you why in a second. And it has to do with your approach to the relationship between the lips and jaw. Okay? So Dope Sheet in Maya is something completely different. Basically, the Dope Sheet in Maya is a graph editor without curves. It's just basically all your channels, keyframes, and you can just slide them around. And I don't know why they call it a dope sheet, because it really is not a dope sheet. A mirror as a lip sync animation tool. The difficulty with a mirror, the problem with a mirror is that when you are looking in a mirror and you're doing lip sync, we have a tendency to slow way down. And we look at the mirror and we over pronunciate and our lips go like this, and we really get an inaccurate representation of how the mouth moves when we're actually speaking. Because it's impossible to just like steal a frame from your mirror when you're speaking as quickly as I'm speaking right now. I wonder what the ooh looks like in woo. That's rad. You can't like save that image, so we slow it way down. Problem with that is that, again, it gives you kind of a one frame image of the face, which doesn't acknowledge the lips and jaw relationship, because it's a relationship. It's not necessarily a marriage. There's a little bit of play there, and I'll describe what that is. So the thing with a mirror is that a mirror is very valuable if you're using it to get information about one pass at a time. And we'll go through what those passes are, but when you're using a mirror, the rule is only use a mirror for one pass at a time, and not the entire face image. Okay? And then reference video is the opposite problem as a mirror. Because when we're watching reference video, what ends up happening is we speed it way up because we're talking naturally and we're trying to match the lips of us speaking naturally, and we don't pronunciate enough, or in other words, when we're animating, we kind of do have to use the fundamental of exaggeration to really get it to read correctly. Okay? So these tools have their advantages, but they also have their problems. And these two bottom ones are the most often used tools by animators in CG. So you need to be careful of the pitfalls that they have. So this is an X sheet. And you don't really need to see that. But I will say one thing. We actually got X sheets from Nickelodeon when we were doing a pilot for them here. And it was really helpful to have. So they're not bad planning tools, for all sorts of animation. They actually can be very, very helpful. Here's a little bit more of a simplified X sheet for use with CG animation, because you can copy your audio waveform in here. I wanted to show you a little bit of how the animator started breaking down this dialogue. Now, the interesting thing is they did it by syllables. So the line is, "We're in a bar. What'd you expect us to do?" All right. So here's the beginning of the audio waveform, and there's a W and an I, Y, R, I, H. Now you notice that these are not letters. These are just the syllables of each word. So w, I, n, b, We're in a bar. We're in a bar. What'd you expect us to do? So you're probably used to this kind of breakdown, but again, there is a huge pitfall that is right in front of animators when you are breaking down your dialogue in this fashion. And what it is that you are focusing a little bit too much on the parts of speech or the building blocks of words, of sounds, and not enough on the visuals. All right, so we'll talk about why in a second after we talk about a little bit of anatomy. So here's your anatomy. There's the the inside of your face. Okay. It's not very flattering. So inside your mouth, you have all of these different tools, these different parts that work together and produce sound. Obviously, your vocal cords are where the sound comes out of because your vocal cords vibrate. Sound is just vibration. That's all it is. So when the sound, the vibration, is carried on the air and comes out, it can come out a lot of different ways. I just wanted to start changing your mind about how you create these images that represent the sound, because it's actually very interesting, the differences that occur. So my favorite is M, B, and P. Most of us start out by making M, B, and P pretty much the exact same shape. But we don't realize that lip sync is not really about the shape that you're seeing. It's more about the motion, specifically the motion into and out of that one keyframe that you are setting. So what's the difference between mama, baba, and papa? Papa, mama, baba. It's weird, and it's very, very, very slight. So let's try it. If you all do this, I know we're not all doing it together, but hopefully you're in the comfort of your own home and there's no one around to laugh at you. Let's try just making an M sound. Okay, easy. What's happening is the air that's coming out of our vocal cords, the air that's moving across our vocal cords and vibrating them, and then that vibration is carried out. It's actually going out of our nose. It's weird. You pronounce M with your nose? Yes, you do. Try this. Go, and then plug your nose. Just craps out. Okay? So the air goes up and out the nose. What's interesting to note about this, or important, I should say, to note about this, is that you can make an M sound as long as you want. As long as you have air. Because the air has a way to escape. Now with a P, you actually are closing off your nasal area, and you're closing, the air is trying to come out of your vocal cords, and you're just holding it in your mouth. Your lips are actually keeping the pressure. If you're about to make a P sound, like everyone do this, put your lips together like you're about to say the word, pepperoni. But really press that P close and don't let it out. Pepperoni, right? You can actually hold that forever. Again, you can hold that forever. Because it's actually your vocal cords working against your lips. So an M, it can go out your nasal cavity, out your nostrils. And with a P, it's your vocal cords versus your lips. And that struggle, that's a balance. You can just hold that. With a B, it's actually very interesting, because a B is a humming P, basically. Everyone try to do this. Now, be legit about it. Actually do the B sound. And what you'll notice is that you can't hold it forever. It just dies. Right? Bah! Very quickly, that pressure that actually is trying to go out your nasal cavity because you're humming and being forced against your lips, and actually turns around and it's actually pressured downwards on your vocal cords. And that pressure downwards on your vocal cords makes it so that the air can no longer travel up and the hum stops, because what little air was vibrating those vocal cords is over. Okay? So what's the point of all this? Point is is that when you are looking at doing lip sync, it's vital to know how that sound is being made, because you could very unrealistically animate the face. That would be an impossible pose, for instance, to hold, depending on what is going on inside the mouth. Like B, you wouldn't make a character have like a B face for like 5 seconds, like 120 frames. Because that's not really how it works. So when I talk about how the animation changes, I'll give you a little hint. I like to give you this one, and you can explore and find out the rest for yourself. M, B, and P. The difference is M, the lips and the jaw basically are working together almost in concert. And since there is a avenue for the air to escape the nasal cavity through the nostrils, you can hold it closed and open it at will. Right? With P, again, the pressure is building against your lips, making it so that you can make that P almost as long as you ever want to do it. Pop, 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 pop. Pop, 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 pop. But with B, you can't. Ba, 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 ba. So when you're listening to that dialogue, you need to make sure that you're building the correct shape and holding it for the right amount of time. And so that's just one. And there's plenty of others. Interesting one, the difference between J, G, and K. Also very, very interesting one to figure out. And they're almost analogous to MB and P. Okay? So the anatomy effects, MB and P, internal pressure, vocal cord involvement. It's when you're listening to your audio file, make sure that you're paying so close attention to how the lips are forming these shapes in anticipation of. There's fundamentals in lip sync. Don't forget, in anticipation of the sound actually coming out. And when you have a firm grasp on the anatomy, things become a lot easier. Tongue involvement, L, G, and K. The tongue almost plays the same role as the lips and nasal cavity in terms of the vocal cord involvement as MB and P. So look closely at those. I think I said J, G, and K. Probably have to change the slide. F and V, teeth involvement. Okay? When you're talking about teeth involvement, again, when it is a different word, and we're going to get to this in terms of co-articulation in a second, but when it's a different word, there's a lot of different kinds of Fs you can have. You can have the lower lip tucked underneath the front teeth, or it can actually be really kind of pursed. And it's important to know which sounds produce the different visual. We'll talk about that in a second too. G and K, again, internal pressure, vocal cord movement. Try for yourself to figure out MB and P, which one is G-like, MB and P, which one is K-like, MB or P. Do that at home. Less is more. Holy mackerel. All right. With the tongue, especially with L's and TH's, I see a lot of students dialing in pre-built shapes. It's like, oh, here's an L. And so they just click on L, and it's like the tongue's like all the way out. It does not work that way. Okay? Most of the L's we pronounce are actually up against, the upper palate. And we barely see the tongue. In fact, I'll tell you a little story. Don't tell him, but the first pilot that my studio ever did, 2 of the main characters didn't even have tongues, and the executive producer never pointed it out, never brought it up, and we just basically got away with that. But shh, it's a secret. This is going on the internet. Okay. Lips and teeth with F and V. Same thing as L and TH. Just be really careful that you're not like having your character bite and swallow their lower lip with those F's and V's. Okay, I already did a couple of them, but there's so many little intricate ways to do the F. And listening to the audio and understanding the anatomy is what's going to inform you with that. And we'll also do a little bit more of a tricky trick later. Now, phonemes, you've heard this word a lot, and I don't like to focus on it because it's not how we need to think about lip sync animation because it's visual. Phonemes are actually parts of speech. But I want to start out by introducing you to phonemes in a way that kind of like, craps on their reputation. so that, like, if this is the first time you've ever heard of phonemes, you're like, oh man, phonemes stink. I'd love it for, all the animators that watch this to be walking around, for the rest of their lives like, oh, all phonemes stink. Yeah, that's great. All right. So phonemes are the most misleading guide that you can have for lip sync because it really makes you overdo stuff. The reason we started with phonemes is this, and I don't blame them. It makes a lot of sense. But it was that in the 90s, like late 90s, there was a whole lot of attempts to automate lip sync. And most of them took like an English dictionary, and they still have these products now, and they're a lot better now. But regardless, they normally took like an English dictionary, and then you typed in a text file, and then it tried to match the audio waveform to the text file, which drove phoneme-based blend shapes. Now, the reason, again, that this was attempted, and this was the way that most lip sync was done, and in fact, TDs, character TDs, were more technicians than they were artists in the very, very, very beginning, and phonemes was all they had to go on in terms of dissecting dialogue. But again, the reason that this is this way is because phonemes are basically the smallest part of audible speech, and they are even smaller than syllables, and they're even smaller than letters. Okay, there are more phonemes than there are letters in the English alphabet. Okay, there's dozens more. And basically, when you use that method of breaking down your dialogue, but not just stopping there, but then moving on to a phoneme-based approach to the animation, things just get out of hand. Okay? And you start animating kind of in that way that I was talking about earlier, where it's like frame by frame, image by image, which disregards that relationship between the lips and the jaw. Okay, so creating phoneme-based blend shapes is a common practice, but it needs a whole lot of updating. Okay, now there are some phonemes that are useful, and we'll talk about why in a second. But we really want to start moving out of this as quickly as possible. So I brought up diphthongs, and what a diphthong is a combination of phonemes to create vowel sounds. Okay, some the letters of the alphabet are diphthongs. Like well, here we go. A is actually to e. A. I is actually to e. I. O is actually to oo. O. Okay, so. How betraying, isn't it? A little bit. It's like, oh man, all these letters. I learned that they A-E-I-O-U when you're a little kid, right? No, but there's actually two sounds in all of these. And these phonetic breakdowns of even just these vowels starts to actually show you how you can get a little bit mixed up when you're using phonemes. Because if you have an A and an E shape, that has been created for you, or you create for yourself when you're making your own blend shapes. Or if you have a deformer base, like an in-panel control system with controls directly on the face, driving the deforms. Maybe you have saved for yourself in your shelf or in some sort of facial GUI a preset that has all of those deform controllers where it needs to be for the phoneme ah, and then for the phoneme e. So when you animate an I, you click on the ah, click on the e, and then you're done. Well, you're not. Okay. These are all the phonemes. I think this list is 34 or 38. You don't need to read that. I don't want you to read that. I just wanted to see how complicated it is. Let's get out of it. Let's run away from it real quickly. CoArticulation. Everyone do this. Put your mouth in the right shape to pronounce the F in food. Like you're really about to pronounce it. All right, shake it out. Okay. The F in fear. All right, shake it out. The F in fun. Okay. Obviously, these are all very different to each other. Okay. Let's do these really quickly. The L in leave. L in lose. P in popcorn. And the P in press. Don't be embarrassed. Any good lip sync animator at the end of a long day of lip sync, their face is so tired. It's like mush. You feel like you've been in a boxing match if you're doing it right. So, what is coarticulation? Coarticulation is basically the blending together of shapes that are connected to those phonemes that you're using as your breakdown for that audio. In other words, the F in the beginning of food looks completely different to the F in the beginning of fear. And why is that? It's because your mouth is preparing, basically, to pronounce the rest of the letters. So, if you have just a facial GUI that is filled with phonemes, or those automatic tools that have all of the letters or of the alphabet or all the phonemes dialed in. And yeah, let's say you're animating the word fear, and you go frame 5, click F. Frame 7, E. Or E, the sound E. And then R. Click that snarly R on frame 9 or whatever. And you're like, fear. Well, it might look okay. But 30 seconds of that kind of lip sync, camera straight on, or medium close up, you're out of the game, out of the picture. So if you disregard natural coarticulation, you're going to be married to shapes that again disregard the relationship the lips play with the jaw and how those phoneme sounds actually blend together. Well, it turns out that there are only a certain number of combinations of shapes in the face that are the result of the phonemes being blended together. All right. Now you would say to yourself, okay, well, it's like 34 to the 34th number of combinations. It's like so many combinations, like hundreds of thousands of millions of trillions, I think, right? No. Because ah blending to oo is that halfway point, basically the blending of those natural coarticulations is the same as eh to oo, right? So you automatically take out one right there. And so what has been discovered basically is that there's something called a Vizima, which is the snapshot of the natural coarticulations of phonemes. So a Vizima, and I didn't even know what this was, actually. When I read Jason Osipa's book, I had been animating for 10 years. So imagine my surprise when I'm saying to myself, or I'm saying to my TDs when I'm working, like, hey, you got to stop giving me like a different phoneme for ah and eh and ah and e and a and all these different things, because I know what I'm doing, but it's creating all this junk in the scene, and it's actually getting kind of confusing to have to manage it all. Along comes Jason Osipa's book, and he talks about Vizims, and then the answer's right there. Oh, this is fantastic. This is really valuable information. Turns out that phonemes only give you the oral information. Oral. It's hard to pronounce. Oral information. But since we're animators, we need to actually make it look like the sound is coming out. We don't actually have to break down. We're not trying to give the audience symbols for what letters the character is speaking. That's phonemes. No, we need the visual components of speech. So when you take a snapshot, and there are only a few, you get Vizimes. And here's the list of Vizimes. Now there's only 13 on this list of Vizimes. That's amazing, right? That's half as many letters as there are in the alphabet. But it turns out using these Vizimes, you can actually have a complete list of all the different shapes, okay, the mouth and the jaw take to pronounce pretty much everything. Okay, now you don't have to write this all down. If you Google Vizimes, this is the first list that comes up. So don't worry about copying this down. Okay, so let's look at a couple of them. Start with the font. PB&M, closed lips. Now, wait a second. We talked about MB&P. And we talked about how it's not about the image, it's about the animation. Right? So, the visual, the snapshot of that natural co-articulation of like PB&M is just closed lips. Doesn't give us the information with the jaw, which is why, again, I'll repeat myself, you have to know what's going on with both components, the jaw and the lips, to make it actually look correct. But that snapshot is the same for all three of them. Like if I go like this, you don't know which one I'm about to pronounce. Well, it's not B because I'm not actually making the sound, but you don't know if it's going to be M or P. Beat and bit, all right? It's the vowel sound that they're pointing at right here. Beat, bit, beat, bit, beat, bit, beat, bit, beat, bit. That is the same as e, and you can do this. Look at a mirror and go e. You don't have to change your lips or your jaw at all. What's going on is like there's a different tongue position and a different, your throat is actually more closed up. And a lot of things are going on, granted, but visually, it's not. So what we do is we start to rely on Vizimes to give us a little bit of a break and to simplify what we need to actually animate. Oh, and it's so nice to have happen. Let's just take a quick segue over to physics. When you're animating a lip sync, be careful of big, broad gestures because the lip sync needs to read even when the character is moving all around. So exaggerate appropriately, especially with like open mouth shapes. They have a tendency when they're moving left to right really quickly to feel like they're stretched wide. So they might have to be just push a little bit more open to combat that effect. Okay? Remember with physics that you need to remember your anatomy, but it's physics that produces the sound. So again, in body mechanics, you're not going to be able to have a character, running at a full pace and talking this slowly, right? How weird would that look? I'm not going to try to do it because I've embarrassed myself enough on these videos. Okay, and then think of the airflow for cues for lip and cheek adjustments, and that kind of goes back to anchors. But I also wanted to add that you can listen to the airflow for also your jaw movement, making sure that you're getting the mouth open enough, for instance, to take that deep breath. And I feel like if you keep all these things in the back of your mind and kind of like the little guardian angel on your shoulder, you'll do okay. But let's start the actual workflow. So we learned about Vizimes, we learned about phonemes, and how when you have something called like diphthong, your already naturally combining phonemes with co-articulation of vowel shapes. And then we need to start actually implementing that. So the Vizims have to do with a lot of like the visual, and that's mostly the lips. But the pass you want to start with is the jaw. Okay? First of all, the jaw moves way less than you think. Put your hand under your jaw to feel it moving. This is the single thing that you can start doing. This is the hand position, right? Make a karate chop, bend your fingers in half, nice and flat under there, get it up underneath. This is the best. Want to know why? Because everyone has it. Unless you've been in an accident. I'm really sorry if I just offended you. Okay? And the flatness is really easy to read when you're looking at a mirror. Okay? And you can feel it. You can feel it in your hand when you're moving it. Okay? So this is the where you want to be. All right? You're going to live here. You're going to love it. All right? Get used to it. Enjoy it. Put your hand underneath your jaw right now, and let's pronounce some words together. Okay? A couple of my favorites. Pepperoni. Normally what I see when I see animators animate this word is something like this. Pepperoni. Pepperoni. 4 jaw open closes on every single syllable. Pepperoni. And they come to me, they say, Kenny, why is my animation, my lip sync looking so weird? I say, here we go. Let's try it out. Pepperoni. 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 Look at that. Only 2, half as many jaw open closes as that animator thought there were there. Pepperoni. Pepperoni. Now there's a little bit of what Jason O'Shippa calls a shelf. I like that word. I've changed to that word in the purr of pepper. Pepperoni. It's almost as if the jaw doesn't quite close all the way and is just slightly open on that little syllable. But that's okay. Okay? But isn't that interesting? Half as many movements as you thought. Let's do another one. Another one of my favorite words is soccer. I always see this when animators do it. Soccer. 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 And what you're doing is you're letting the sound trick you. You're using the audio, the sound of it is making you do that. Well, let's actually feel what's going on. Soccer. Soccer. It helps if you have a little bit of pressure, so you really actually have to open your jaw with a little bit of force. Not too hard, don't punch yourself. I've done that. Soccer, soccer, soccer. It's interesting. Only 1 open close. Half as many, again, as what is the normal instinct to do, just listening to those syllables coming out. Pow, 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 pow. Okay? So, this is a great way to do it. Another way is you can hold your lips back like this and talk into a mirror. It's a little bit embarrassing, and you probably don't want to be caught doing that by your coworkers, so this is just fine for now. Another little tip, the tongue accounts for a large number of the mistakes that you're going to be making if you're animating the jaw. Okay? The tongue is a wily devil. Be careful with the tongue. Okay? I'm going to come up with another word. Regurgitate. 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 That's probably what I would see. 4 opens. Regurgitate. 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 Okay, so what the tongue is kind of doing, actually the anatomy is doing, is in between the re and the gurge, there's a shelf. And that shelf is accounted for by your mouth on the inside changing position from the E to the G. And that makes a little bit of a shelf in that word, but with novice animators, what we undoubtedly see is regurge. Regurge, and not regurgitate. It's just a slight shelf and then it pops open. So it's open, shelf, open, close, open, close. So it's basically an open with a shelf, a close, and an open with a shelf. So basically 2 open closes instead of 4 open closes. Again, regurgitate, regurgitate, regurgitate. Okay? I don't know why I picked that word. That was gross. Sorry. All right. And now the jaw is animated more phonetically, whereas the lips are animated visually. We have the Vizimes for the lips. And the jaw is animated a little bit more phonetically. And what I mean by that is that we take the sound kind of as the cue on how to open the jaw. Okay? So for instance, I'll harp again on this later, but with open mouth shapes, for instance, at the beginning of a word. Or the beginning of a phrase. So I'm going to go outside and then I'm going to put on a raincoat. All right? What normally novice animators do is say, I'm going to go outside, mouth closes, and I'm going to put on a raincoat. And the mouth just like shoots open right as the sound and right when that sound starts, that's when the jaw opens. But the way it actually works, especially with open mouth shapes at the beginning of a phrase, is that mouth starts slowly opening and really getting into position. Okay? So it should look like I'm going to go outside and I'm going to put on a raincoat. You see how I was just opening up and whatever? So we need to take our cues from the phonemes, like for and, with our jaw, and be on the lookout for those kinds of things. Okay? The lips and jaw relationship. Okay, if you use only one approach, for instance, a Vizime or a phoneme, you're going to get an unnatural connection that is not true to life. So, for instance, especially when you're using facial GUIs that have pre-built shapes loaded into them. What ends up happening, literally in Maya, a keyframe is, boom, set on the lips and the cheeks and the tongue and the teeth and the jaw all at the same time. That's locking basically the motion. It's marrying the motion together for that jaw and the lips. But that's not how it works. Let's use a good example. Let's throw me the ball. Okay, let's use that. All right, especially the word ball. When you come out of the end of the word the or the, and you're about to make that B shape, if you clicked on the B preset or the B blend shape or whatever it is, and that lip and that jaw both receive a keyframe, then you're going to get something like this. The jaw closed, the B, the lips are really pressed together. Throw me the, and then all. So it's going to actually look like throw me the mall. Because with M's, the jaw and the lips move together. Ma, 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 ma. But with B's, it doesn't. So that unnatural connection is ruining your animation. Throw me the mall? What do you mean throw me the mall? That's crazy. The way it actually works with B's, and this is a big hint, is the jaw goes way before the lips come apart. Watch as the jaw starts dropping down. Throw me the ball. You see that? The jaw was almost all the way open. And the lips were fighting to stay together. And then, just naturally when we're speaking, this is what happens. Right when it's about to kind of come apart, we actually press, we let them pop apart to make that B sound. Throw me the ball. You see that? Throw me the ball. See my hand go down? And I can feel it too, because I'm doing this right. So you need to break up the passes. Now, Jason Osipa's book, Stop Staring, again, a great book. He tells everyone to do the lips pass first. I don't see how that's the best way. With my method, starting with the jaw, you actually get what is what is going to be by the audience judged as for the accuracy in terms of timing done first. Meaning if you do it right, you're going to only have to make very slight timing changes to the jaw pass. Okay? Whereas if you do the lips first, you might have some open mouth shapes that you need to animate, that when you do the lips for those open mouth shapes but the jaw isn't moving yet, you might have incorrectly timed it. Meaning you have to go back and do adjustments with that workflow on not only the pose but the timing of the lips pass after the jaw is done. Does that make sense? So I feel like jaw first no matter what. And at Animation Mentor, they have a great method of teaching this and kind of enforcing this. And so I 100% wholeheartedly agree with what they're doing there. So what you should do is create blended animation that honors that independence of the lips and jaw. Okay? So don't forget your fundamentals, people. Asymmetry. Okay? That's another way of saying you can't have twinned poses. Not even in lip sync. Alright? It's just no fun. Anticipation. Anticipation is a way to kind of say that some facial shapes actually need to be anticipated in order to read better. But there's also another little part that we'll talk about in just a sec, that anticipation kind of is a specific fundamental to lip sync. Follow through. We all know what follow through is. Sometimes it's good to just go a little bit past that shape and come back. Like woo! Like woo! Really get those lips out there like a orangutan, and then bring it back in. Timing and texture. Okay, with timing, you need to remember that you're not. Sometimes you're not going to be able to animate at 24 frames per second everything that's there. So don't let your timing break because you're trying to get every single thing you see on screen. I would pity the fool that had to animate like the Micro Machines guy. You know, that guy. Is he the fastest talker in the world? I'm gonna look that up when I'm done. And texture. Texture is a fundamental that has, well, it's not really an animation fundamental, but it has such a big role to play with lip sync, because your body mechanics and your full body head to toe performance is what is it's the framework, it's the foundation that those lips and the jaw is moving on top of. It's like kind of catching a ride on that body mechanics. So you need to be a little bit careful. If the character is talking really quickly, for instance, is that going to look very weird and a little too textural on top of like smooth body animation? If he's saying like, why would I want to do that? Something like that. You probably need to support that with a little bit of frenetic, staccato movements in the body. So the lips and the lip sync animation can be actually a textural addition to an overall scene. Okay? Some last minute hints before we look at a shot. Okay? Most Vizims rely on relative change. Increase the readability of shapes by keying in the opposite direction. I talked about anticipation, but let's look at one of these examples. I was already thinking of the word. Let's look at one of this. Let's try this, okay? Eat this. Eat this. Now what's weird is TH is that's one of the Vizims. TH, not sure where it was on the list. It was somewhere in the middle. I remember seeing it. Now, eat. That's a very wide facial shape. E. So it seems to me that the TH of this actually is just a little bit wider than the E of eat. Okay? So what does that mean? It turns out that TH especially, but many shapes, actually only rely on relative change. So eat this, move this. Eat this, move this. The TH of this after move, not nearly as wide as the TH after eat. Meaning you only have to be relatively wider. So again, if you click on the TH shape, eat this, move this, you're going to get a super wide TH after the word move. It's going to look weird. So TH is one I'll give you. Go through all of the Vizimes and figure out which ones are relying on relative change for yourself at home. And then another last minute hint, we rarely key lip sync early enough. Okay, when in doubt, go earlier. A little bit of a cheat here, but every once in a while when my lip sync, when I'm just fighting with it and it just doesn't look right, you know what I do? I grab all of the keys and I just slide them one frame earlier. And then I just start working again. 9 times out of 10, it makes it look, it puts it right back on track. Okay. So those are the last minute hints, and it's pretty good stuff. Let's go ahead and look at the overall simplified workflow. Okay. First pass. Open, close, just the jaw. Take your hand, put it underneath your face like this, and pronounce the entire line of audio. You can look in a mirror, but only get the information for the jaw pass looking in the mirror. Do not look at your lips. Do not look at anything else. Just your jaw, just your hand moving, and feel it. Get that jaw pass perfect. Get it perfect. It's possible to. All right? Because the jaw pass is 60 to 70% of the entire lip sync animation. If it's wrong, if you're pepperoni, it will look, the entire lip sync animation will look wrong. All right? That's why the Muppets look good. Because even without lip shapes, we still kind of graft our understanding and what we want to see on the Muppet heads when they're performing. Okay? And then narrow and wide. The second pass is the lips. All right? But just narrow and wide. Okay? Narrow, oo, wide, e. That's it. So they're in the first two passes, and these are the first two passes that I said got me 85% there. Or, in other words, when I showed animation to my supervisor that had only these two passes, 85% of the time that animation was bought. Granted, the schedule was really tight. However, it still bears its own reputation as being the most important two passes you can do. Make sure you have a perfect jaw, or as perfect as you can get it, before you start on that narrow wide. And it's that simple, just oo and e, okay? Looking at the Vizimes will give you the cue, and that list of Vizimes will give you the cue. When you've done your jaw pass, you can take your hand away and you can go back into the mirror and you can slowly pronounce those words, but all you're doing is getting information in terms of the narrowness or the wideness of your lips when you're doing this pass. Don't go back and change the jaw. Don't add keys on top of the jaw. That's not what you're there for. Okay? It's just to get information for the next pass. Remember, one pass at a time when you're looking at a mirror. Then custom shapes. When you're done your open, close, narrow, wide, those just 4 directions. Okay? Then you have custom shapes. Custom shapes are things like tucking the teeth or tucking the lips underneath the teeth for a nice, bitey F or V. It's THs. It's la la la. Tongues coming out. It's really narrow. CH sounds or snarly R's, those kinds of things where the lips are going to curl and bend and contort. All right, those are your custom shapes. All right, pretty much after your custom shapes, you're 95% there. So these two will get you 80% there, 8 to 85. These will get you another 10% there. And then extra fundamentals and texture. The extra fundamentals, remember to exaggerate those facial shapes by anticipating them a little bit, or maybe exaggerating a little bit more of that relative change for a shape like TH. That is a relative shape. Asymmetry, those kinds of things. And then texture, going back to what we were saying about listening to and finding those anchors, make sure that they're very textural, the way that you put them in. Okay? A lot of the time I see way too much lip movement to put the final texture in. My advice for this is to always put all animation into the biggest controller you can. A lip controller like Lip Corner 1, L5, whatever, that's a really tiny control. Is it possible to put it into the body? Maybe. Right? Animating a laugh. How do you animate a laugh? I wouldn't say that you need to do very much animation on the face at all. But what I see is people go ha 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 ha, like opening it up. No, open the mouth once, animate the body. That's what I'm talking about in terms of putting all that animation into the biggest controls as possible. Open the mouth, animate the body. Ha 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 ha. I didn't move my face at all, and it looks so much better than ha 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 ha, right? So put those anchors in and exaggerate and really rough it up and make it nice and textural, but be careful not to put it into, like little microcontrollers on the lips and stuff like that. Okay? And time to create a shot. All right. So, like I said, this is a shot that I created for the purposes of a conference. But again, this was created in the 30 minutes that I had to do this part of the demo. So the workflow is sound. You're going to be happy with the results if you implement this workflow. And for most of you, if you're anything like my students, this workflow is simpler than what you are used to. So that's hopefully some good news. Okay. So this is the sound. I chose the 11 Second Club October competition from last year to do this lip sync. So let's listen to it a few times.
I thought that if I could help him in some way, get him this girl that he loves, that maybe, things would change for me. I thought that if I could help him in some way, get him this girl that he loves, that maybe, things would change for me.
Now, this has a lot of anchors. The ones I want to point out are the ones where he's breathing, where he goes like that. He's kind of like sniffing kind of loudly. Let's listen.
Girl that he loves, that maybe,
He goes, that maybe so he breathes once through his nose, and then he does it again with sort of more of a snort.
That maybe, that maybe, that maybe, that maybe,
So those are two really good anchors to put into this lip sync. Okay? And then right before he says that things would change for me, he does a little bit of a with his teeth.
Things would change for me. Things would change for me. Things would change for me.
And then in the middle of things would change for me, he says things would just change. So there's a little bit of a hitch in his speech right there. He stutters just a little bit.
Things would change for me.
All very good things to latch onto, and very good things to pay attention to when animating this animating this piece, because what we're going to get is a lot of mileage out of those anchors, which is fantastic. Okay, so this is how I would start. I have a scene right here. Let me actually delete the animation on this one so that we can really start over. Okay, this is a control on his jaw. Okay, and what I want to do is I just want to start just like I showed you. Take my hand, put it up underneath here, and really feel that jaw moving.
I thought.
Well, one thing that I noticed is that kind of in anticipation of that open mouth shape, like I said, we're going to want to get that jaw open. So let's key it like right here, about 4 frames ahead of time, and then just slowly get it open. On thought, the tongue is going to be sticking out, but this character has no tongue controller, so I don't need to worry about that. But I need to get it closed for the TH of thought. And now this is a little bit in anticipation. If I move the lips out of the way, you can kind of see. Oops, that's the mouth control. Where's the lip? Here it is. You can kind of see that the lips the teeth are a little parted. Okay, this would be totally closed. Okay, so just a little bit. And now let's open it nice and wide for thought. Get it nice and closed in anticipation of that T sound, and then there's a kind of a hard T. It's just a little bit open, and then relax his mouth.
I thought.
Okay.
I thought that if.
Okay. Now again, the TH is a very relatively sensitive shape. So it needs to be very wide, but we're not thinking about that right now. And I know how hard it is to not go right here to this frame. And let's just choose controllers. There we go. I know how hard it is to not go to this frame and grab this and, move it over here and make it a nice wide TH. I know how hard it is. But trust me, when you get the timing perfect on the jaw, everything else comes into place. That's why when you're watching a movie and it's an over-the-shoulder shot, you can tell if they slid the line like 2 frames in the reaction of the person who's turned away from you just by the jaw. Some of you probably noticed that. Look in your favorite movie, or next time you're watching a movie, and if there's an over-the-shoulder shot, okay, and the person on camera says like, "Hey, what do you think of that?" And the person that's looking away from camera starts responding, look right at their jawbone. Chances are, for the edit, they tightened it up and and slid the line a little bit, and you can tell just from the timing of that. Okay, so that's all we're worried about. I thought
that if I could.
All right, so there's a big open on the that. Okay, and then there's a little bit, I feel a tiny bit of a shelf on if. Just a tiny bit. And I'm going to key it again a couple frames later just so that it feels like a shelf. I get it nice and open. And now I felt only one open close. I could. Not I could, but I could.
I thought that if I could help it.
Okay. Are you seeing that? It already is looking that we're doing pretty well on this jaw.
I thought that if I could help it.
You see that?
I thought that if I could help him in.
All right, so we've done really good. So let me reopen the scene that had the jaw pass done on here so you can see what's going on.
I thought that if I could help him in some way, get him this girl that he loves, that maybe, things would change for me. I thought that if I could help him in some way, get him this girl that he loves, that maybe, things would change for me.
Okay, one thing I want to point out is look how far in anticipation of help he opens his mouth.
I could help him.
See that?
I could help him. I could help him.
See how much is open right here? That's crazy amount of open. It's like a minute before it starts, but it works because we know what we're doing here.
I could help him in some way, get him this girl that he loves.
Now I noticed when I was listening very closely to the line that there's an inhale. He goes, see that? That little anchor right here, getting that mouth closed means that it's going into his nose. So sometimes you don't actually even have to move the nose, like crinkle the nose or get any snarl in the nose or anything like that. If there's a nose inhale sound, close the mouth, and then if you want to, you could even do a little bit of head, like that, like a little sniff of his head. But the head is not animated in this shot, okay? Just the lip sync.
That maybe,
And then the big inhale right here.
Things would change for,
Okay.
Things would.
And then the things would change, or sorry, things would change. Look at the stutter and listen to that anchor that he has before he says things.
Things would change for me. Things would change for me.
Okay, after we're done this pass, all right, that jaw pass is complete. It's time to move on to the lips. So we're going to do just narrow wide. All right, since we're doing the Julia Child method, I'm going to have to learn how to use Maya first. Jeez, come on. Okay. I'm going to start just working on these two little corner controls. Now I know you don't have, not everyone has access to a rig that is this good. This is the generic mail from Paxton Garish from CharacterOutsource.com. It's a website that he's launching. He's released this and has given me permission to use it in conferences and lectures. He's a very nice guy. And this is a fantastic rig because it has my favorite kind of control. Instead of blend shapes over here in the channel box, it's got basically in-panel deforms that you can move around and really get a nice fleshy face. And I love it. I think it's fantastic. But what we're going to do is we're just going to use the narrow wide pass. Just, oops, translate X, there we go. Just narrow, just wide. Okay? If I had a mirror right now, but I can feel that diphthong. So it goes from pretty just like, normally just relaxed, not narrow, not wide, to pretty wide. All right, pretty narrow again on the O. I thought. Okay, back to a little bit of a neutral, and then we need to get that nice hard T. T. Okay, relax it again. Okay, relative shape, remember, so we can really pop it. Get it back to normal. Back to normal. If I. See, nice and wide again. I could. Back to narrow. See, this is how easy it is. I'm going very straightforward. You don't need to, do a pose-to-pose approach when you're doing it in passes. You can just move straight forward and use those lip controls to go in and out in this first pass. Okay.
If I could help.
So let's look again here.
I thought that if I could help. Okay,
a little bit of a weird thing has happened. Okay.
I thought that if I
You see that?
that
See how it just pops nice and wide? It's relative shape. Okay, now let's move on. Let's just look at the lips pass. I believe that this is the pass that I say once I did the first across the board narrow wide pass. And it looks like I cheated a little bit and did one little custom shape on the F and V.
in some way, I thought that if I could help him in some way, get him this this girl.
Okay, so that pass is not complete. Let's see. As I moved on. A word about emotion. The up and down controls on the corners of the mouth are really pretty intimately tied into emotion. So I actually liked in this shot to kind of make him look like he was downtrodden and a little PO'd about, his situation and complaining about it. So you'll notice that I actually put that up and down into the narrow and wide. But I was very, very careful to make sure the narrow and the wide was right on. The up and the down is more just emotion in the lips. So until you have done this workflow a few times for yourselves, I would say probably leave that until a little bit later. So do as I say, not as I do.
I thought that if I could help him in some way, get him this this girl that he loves, that maybe,
Okay, looks like I was going pretty crazy in the beginning part of that. Let's just skip right to the last version of this shot. Okay, and take a look at that final lip sync performance.
I thought that if I could help him in some way, get him this this girl that he loves, that maybe, things would change for me. I thought that if I could help him in some way, get him this this girl that he loves, that maybe, things would change for me. I thought that if I could help him in some way, get him this this girl that he loves, that maybe, things would change for me.
Okay, so in the final version of the shot, so a couple things that I want to point out is that, the word loves. What's interesting about V is that it has pretty much almost the exact same Vizima as F, and the tendency and the common pitfall is to make it so that the bottom lip is so tucked up underneath that upper teeth that it's almost disappearing. But what I heard in this is that it is very, very, very co-articulated with loves. So I really just felt like it would be better looking to get that lip slightly tucked, but really animate the V motion rather than the shape. And so pop that lower lip out for loves.
Get him this this girl that he loves.
You see how on love I start to make that shape, but I don't really show any teeth. I just hold it and pop the lip out. Let the lip pop out right here. Okay? And I think that was a really good looking solution for a very quick part of this line. Probably would not have gotten away with a very tucked F or V right there.
Girl that he loves.
You see how that looks?
That maybe, things would.
Okay, a lot of asymmetry in this shot.
Things.
And on that little anchor, change, I made that pretty much all pronounced on one side of the face. Let's look from the front.
Things would change for me. I thought that if I could help him in some way, get him this this girl that he loves, that maybe, things would change for me.
Okay, so all in all, that entire lip sync performance took me about a half hour. Actually, it was about 40 minutes in the first time that I did this presentation at a conference. Okay, so working with this workflow, what it will allow you to do is simplify probably what you're doing right now. It's simpler than. I hope it's simpler than. It will, hopefully it will create a little bit of a buffer in terms of all the stuff that you're keeping in your head, in terms of the lip sync performance and what you can actually manage. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like there's so much to remember and that this shot is never going to get anywhere, hopefully that this will create a little bit of a buffer. Okay, I'm working on my jaw pass right now, and I hear all these other things, and it's such a broad performance, and the body and the character is extremely upset. Like, what am I going to do with all that? All that emotion, all that stuff. You know what? It's okay. I'm working my jaw pass. I got my hand up under here. I look like a pro, and I'm rocking out. Okay, so it really is my deepest wish for you all to be less stressed out, having more fun, and doing better lip sync overall. So let's wrap it up. Plan your lip sync well. All right, but remember the pitfalls of the planning tools that I pointed out: X sheet, mirror, reference video. Be careful of the pitfalls there. Listen to the dialogue over and over. Most of all, listen for those anchors. Listen for the little things, the tiny little breaths, the stutters, the pauses, the clicks and pops. This one was filled with those. Oh, I loved it because it was filled with those. And that'll make your animation really feel like it's in the scene. Use your understanding of anatomy to base your phoneme and Vizima choices. Remember MB and P? Those images are not really the images of the motion of that lip sync, right? The ball can very quickly look like the mall if you don't understand the anatomy behind it. Reduce of the palette of the shapes down to lip Vizims, and those phonetic cues, basically phonemes, will help you with your jaw pass. This will be your first tool, okay? But also, for instance, opening the jaw well ahead of open mouth shapes will really, 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 really help you out, okay? Just one more time, I really want to harp on that. You almost can't do it enough, okay? I'm going to go outside and put on a raincoat. I'm going to hold my mouth open for like 3 seconds, and I promise it won't look weird. It'll look like I'm not. It'll look like I don't know what I'm about to say. It won't look like my facial performance is wrong, though. Okay, here we go. I'm going to go outside, and I'm going to put on a raincoat. You see that? It was hanging open the whole time. So those little phonetic cues, what's coming up? Oh, it's an ah sound. Okay, well then there's your cue. Remember your fundamentals, physics, and texture. Show it to colleagues often. Don't even just show it to colleagues. Show it to your mom, your husband or wife. Show it to friends. Show it to anybody that you can, as long as you're not taking NDA work home. But people on the street are fantastic at looking at lip sync. There's some things, it's actually kind of frustrating, and I know you all know this, but you'll show your animation that you work so hard on to somebody, and they'll be able to pick out, what's wrong with it. And it's like, but you don't even know how hard it is to animate this stuff. It's like, yeah, but the walk looks weird. And it's like, you're right, but I want to punch you in the nose. But show it to colleagues often. They will, at first glance, be able to tell you, something's wrong. It's probably your jaw. Just so you know, it's probably your jaw. And one more thing I wanted to just repeat is that, especially with open mouth shapes, but with all sorts of texture, laughs, breathing, but mostly open mouth shapes, try to put all of that animation into the body, or into as big a controller as you can. Remember when the character was sniffing through his nose? It didn't actually have to. I didn't have to use like his nostrils. Closing his mouth was enough to make the audience think when you see it, he's breathing through his nose. It's because where else is he breathing through when I'm hearing the sound? If I wanted to emphasize that just a little bit more, I would not flare the nostrils or do anything like that. I would just move the head a little bit. Like that. Just a tiny little bit. So use the biggest controls you can. Okay? And that's it. Most of all, have fun. Ooh, I could update the avatar. The one on the website has my glasses. Because I realize I'm a person who wears glasses. You ever realize that? People who wear glasses out there who are watching this, like you got glasses like late in life, like I did, and you don't realize that you're a person that everyone knows as wearing glasses. That's me. That's what I think I look like. But no, I have glasses on, so that's why I put it on the website. Well, listen, this was a lot of fun. Again, I am so appreciative of you being here. It is my honor to be giving this information to you in this format. It's a pleasure. I love doing it. I hope I get to do it for a really long time because I have a lot to give and I have a lot of ideas, and I hope you'll stick around and continue your subscription to KennyRoy.com. My company is called Arconics. You can check it out there. Every once in a while I will be recruiting off of KennyRoy.com. And you can look for posts in the forums to that that speak to that, and that's about it. It was, again, a lot of fun. It was my pleasure. Good luck with your animation, and as always, rock on.